and welcome to the Grebner Show. This is Metamore head coach Jared Grebner. This is Scott Kerker. Coach, boy, it's hard to believe. We just played, 5 months ago, and here we are again for I don't want to say the real season, but it's a chance for you to have, if you go ahead and win, looks like our sign's going to fall down here behind us, yep. It gives you a chance to actually play for something. You had a conference title last year, you split 3 ways. But this year you have a chance to make it and go to the playoffs.
Well, it gives us something to play for. You know, we did have the conference championship last year that we shared with Washington and Dunlap, but having those playoffs built in, it just adds a little something extra.
Yeah, it does. And the atmosphere you had here Friday night against Peoria Notre Dame, that was a great atmosphere, and you had a nice crowd, a beautiful night, a little warm. It was a little toasty, especially up here in this press box. It was really toasty.
It was warm outside, but being back in the fall at full capacity with our whole student section back, with the whole community able to come, you know, it was one of those electric feelings that you get at Malone Field, and you know, we were glad just to be a part of it, along with, you know, the cheerleaders and having the band back in the stadium. It's just a great atmosphere to have back in the fall.
Yeah, it was a great night, and you know, before the game, Jim Matson in his little show in the afternoon talked about, you know, it's something special at Malone Field. You know, beautiful sunsets, natural grass, and it's always that electric atmosphere at Malone Field.
You can't beat it playing at home. We consider ourselves very fortunate to be a part of a school like this, to be a part of a community like this, and to go out there and show off, you know, their talents. You know, our kids always relish that moment.
Notre Dame came in ranked number 9 in Class 4A. Always a tough opponent. Notre Dame always plays hard. They're always probably a little undersized, and they were again Friday night, but they played really hard. That's a very good team to start your season off with.
Yeah, I mean, it's a formidable opponent, that's for sure. They're always well coached. Coach Armstrong does a wonderful job with them. They're very disciplined, and they're physical and play with good pad level. And so, you know, we know that we had a very tough opponent in front of us, and we were fortunate to come out on top.
Yeah, they made you play assignment football. They made you stay home. If you over pursued against them, they were going to get you on the backside a lot. And your kids, for the most part, defensively, and we'll get to some of the specifics, but I thought overall your defense played outstanding. They had less than 100 yards of offense.
You know, to play a rushing team like that, we have to make sure that we have very good eye discipline and that we continue to read our keys, and I thought we honed in on that for the most part. You know, there's always going to be mistakes, especially week 1.
Oh yeah.
But to have a team like that come in and, you know, not fool us too much with misdirection, I thought, you know, we executed pretty well.
Yeah, I thought so too. Offensively, you know, you came out, you had quite a few guys coming back from last year, but still you had to replace some of those linemen, and we're not as big up front as we were last year. You still have Big Ben up front. That makes, you know, it helps out a lot. But I thought those other guys, and you had a couple of starters back, and one of the Merritt brothers, but I thought you had another guy that played quite a bit last year too. Was it the other Merritt?
Yes. We had Gabe Minor. He played a lot on defense also last year, and we also have Michael Minor. And so both had experience in games, whether it was defensively or offensively. Last year, Michael was at center for us, and so it wasn't like everything was brand new to them. Both of them were at different positions, and so to see those guys execute the way they did, you know, we couldn't be happier for them.
Another one that was Carson Irvin that came in. I thought offensively and defensively he played really well for you Friday night.
Yeah, and Carson's put in the work. He's a returning starter for us at center. He's done really well. He takes care of all the calls up front, makes sure guys are in the right spot, and defensively, that's a place where he's really come on this year. He's been tenacious in practice, and you especially saw that when he got that sack at about the 30-yard line in the second quarter.
Yeah.
And so that was a really big play for us. And like I said, you know, he's just like all the other athletes out there. He's put in his time, and it's all paying off for him his senior year.
And then the other guys, some of the guys that are kind of have the names. Your linebackers with Garrett Taylor, T.J. Rising, Bogdan. Some of those guys who've played and if you're kind of depending on. I thought the other night though they really came through and kind of lived up to their name. And had great games for you defensively. We'll get to the offensive side too.
Yep.
But defensively, I thought they played great.
They did, and we were pretty experienced there with Bogdan returning as a starter from last year's team. Same thing with TJ. Same thing with Garrett. Now Garrett's had a new position at outside linebacker, where last year he had his hand on the ground at defensive end. But the two defensive ends, the two outside linebackers with Bogdan and Garrett, they don't get a lot of the credit that they deserve for what they did on Friday night as far as stats, because they did a lot of the dirty work, turning things back inside to the reinforcements, kept it clean for the inside linebackers. And so they might not have made a lot of tackles, but they made a lot of the plays. And so that was very key for us coming into the game.
So always keep your outside shoulder free, and they just strung those plays out. And then TJ came in and filled very nicely. And your tackles, they didn't take the plays off; they flowed down the line too. And I thought they did an outstanding job. I thought your defensive backs also. There wasn't a lot of passing, but your defensive backs made a lot of plays, a lot of tackles. We were talking before we went on the air. You said Sam Ole led your team in tackles as a corner, and it wasn't because he was making tackles 10 yards down the field. He came up and made plays at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, Sam, you look in the program, people think he's an undersized guy, but he's not. He plays a lot bigger than he actually is. He had a huge stomp on third or fourth down over there on about their own 40 that gave us a lot of momentum, and so we put him in position to make plays because we knew what he was able to do and what his abilities are, and he showed us that he was up to the challenge.
Yeah, we had a number of stops, a number of big stops on fourth down. Now, when you look at Notre Dame's perspective on that, either they thought, well, we can't stop Metamora, or we must have a really good defense. There goes the rest of our sign. But I thought your defense, though, from that aspect, those were big key turning points. They had some little bit of momentum there in the third quarter, and when you got that third down stop, or that fourth down stop, I thought that really changed the tide for us. We really put a little wind in our sail, and you went down and scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter.
That did give us a little bit of energy. It put a little bit of life back into us. I thought that third quarter, that was a quarter that we all would like to have back, but just some of those stomps that just gave us some momentum that carried on into the fourth.
When you can hold a team to under 100 yards of total offense, you've done a pretty good job.
And that's just a credit to everybody that was not only out on the field playing, but to our scout offense all week long in practice. Sometimes those guys are the unsung heroes because they might not be getting their names called, but it's been the same thing throughout every year at Metamora, where you keep putting in your time because 2 years ago those guys that are starting now, they were doing the exact same thing, and it's just kind of a tradition that carries on, and so it was a team effort all the way around.
Yeah, we switched to the other side of the ball now. I thought your offense, you start and stop with your quarterback, Connor Willerton. Boy, did he play good. He may not have had the greatest stats. He didn't throw for 200 yards. He didn't rush for 100. But when you needed a big play, Connor stepped up, and he made a big play with his feet. He made a couple of really nice passes for touchdowns, and he made a nice read on a third and about 11 or third and 8, I believe, down here on about a 19-yard line. Cam Davis was able to score a touchdown, almost untouched. What a great play! What a headsy senior quarterback.
Absolutely. Coach Dolinsky's done a good job putting him in positions where he's going to be successful, things that he feels comfortable with, and so letting his abilities shine really lets the offense flow. And as a senior quarterback, between him and Solomon, you have two guys out on the field that are, quarterbacks and concedings. They're both really experienced. And Connor was able to show his abilities Friday night.
I thought you guys came out of the gate really strong with Ethan Petrie just pounding it into the middle. Just kept pounding it, pounding. Unfortunately, he got hurt in the second quarter. Hopefully he'll be back this week.
We'll have to kind of see how things go, but we'll keep our fingers crossed on a timetable.
Because that was really effective. He just kept pounding and pounding and pounding. And that is, especially on a hot night, I think that even though he only played about a quarter and a half, I thought he really made a difference because he just kept pounding those defensive players, and eventually that was starting to wear on them. And I think even though he didn't play in the second half, what he did in the first half affected them in the fourth.
Absolutely. He's a bruiser as a running back. He's kind of a bowling ball. He's got a low center of gravity. He's a thick kid, and his legs just keep on turning. He's just kind of a change of pace running back compared to Garrett when he's in there. And he's got a forward lean that just says, I'm always going to get those 2 extra yards if you do bring me down. And, that first time he hit belly over there when we were running it, he went downhill and he was able, to carry a couple runners with him. And, like you said, it does start to wear on you after a while, and people don't want to stick their nose in as much.
No. And then he came back with another change of pace, like we talked about earlier, with Garrett Taylor, who you're running the same plays, but it's just, and you said this before, it just looks different with him running. He's 6'3", 200 pounds-ish, and a smooth runner, and it's just different. You don't have time to step up into the hole because he's past if you don't react right away. And he looked really smooth Friday.
He is real smooth, and when you think about it, that's his about 3rd high school football game where he's carried the ball. He hasn't been a running back in the past, and he was able to last year. Some for us had a little bit of a knee injury, nothing serious though, but it did sideline him a little bit. So really, for that being about his 3rd game carrying the ball, he did real well. He led us in carries. He actually led us in rushing yards with about 120 rushing yards, somewhere in there. And so having him come in as a slasher, we're really happy to see that for him.
The other thing I thought looked really nice was you had 2 touchdown passes. You had one to TJ Rising and another one to Solomon Swartz. I thought both of them completely caught Notre Dame off guard. Perfect passes, perfect plays, and really it was no match. TJ just shrugged off his would-be tackler. Those are definitely mismatches for Metamore.
And the one good thing about pounding the rock a little bit is sometimes you keep people off guard, and all of a sudden when they start to cheat in a little bit and their eyes start to wander to the backfield to the fullback and stuff like that, then all of a sudden their eyes start coming off their keys, and we're able to sneak wide receivers, TJ down the middle, Solomon across the field. One time, on that 2-point play, nobody was even covering Solomon, and so having teams respect them is just going to open up our running game even more. And if they don't, we know we have the weapons on the outside to compete with anybody.
Yeah, I think we only had maybe 3 incomplete passes the whole night.
I believe we were 4 of 8.
4 of 8, so 4. But still, those were well-timed passes, and you completed 4, 2 for touchdowns.
Correct. And I know that we'd like to have some back. We had 2 great calls on the jailbreak screen. We missed them by just a little bit, and we had blockers out front. And I know that's 2 that Connor would like to have back. I'm sure it's 2 that Solomon would like to have back as well, because he could still be running the way that opened up in the end zone. Yeah. But it's learning experiences, whether it's footwork or whether it's ball placement, and we'll continue to grow as the season goes on.
Yeah, I thought there was a lot of positives. I know if as a football coach, the way you look at it is you played great. There's some things we need to work on, but you're probably kind of happy that, because you don't want your best game to be your first game.
Correct. The one thing about that is we started off all right. We didn't finish our first drive on offense. you didn't know how we were going to react defensively. We have some guys in new positions, and they came out and played well. But we were able to march the ball down the field, and we'll take more advantage of our opportunities as the season goes along when we get a feel for where we're at as a team. Yeah, there were mistakes. There's always going to be mistakes in the first game. Like we mentioned, the third quarter, that was probably, not the best quarter by us this season. First, second, and fourth were a lot better. And we can improve a little bit on our special teams, but bottom line is we hung in there together. The camaraderie of this team's great. When they can rally around one another and pull together, nobody got down, and all of a sudden they said, "Hey, let's do this thing." And in the fourth quarter, they took over.
Yeah, I thought you're a little bit more of a will to win, maybe, probably a little more depth. And once you got that go-ahead touchdown, you went up 20-15. You could just see the wind in Notre Dame sails kind of come back, because they realized, we haven't been able to put together anything this whole game, and now we're going to have to try and drive down the field. I think we, on that ensuing kickoff after we went up 20-15, I think they got the ball on like the 24-yard line. They weren't comfortable trying to drive the length of the field, and I think that's a testament to your defense.
When you think about it, they scored one time on the kickoff return, and then the other one was on the short field that we gave them. It gets exponentially harder and harder the farther you have to go, because more mistakes can happen, whether it's flags that put them in a long down and distance that you don't want to get into, or whether it's a tackle for a loss. But there's going to be a blown assignment as we go along. Right. And we did a good job of not giving up the big play to them. Right. We kept making them chew up clock. When they did get something, it's 4 yards at a time, 5 yards at a time, maybe 3 or so. And we bent a little bit, but as the game went along, we never really broke. That was good to see.
I thought that you were able to, guys would go down with cramps, because there was a lot of them Friday. It was a hot, steamy night. They had problems with cramping. We did too. But when you put somebody in, it seemed like they didn't stick out because they were weak. They made some plays for you.
And, we have confidence in everybody that we put in there, and everybody that played in the game. They were up to the challenge. They stepped up, and they just did their job. They didn't try and overcompensate or do their own thing or go in rogue. Everybody that went in still played Metamora football.
One of the guys that I always kind of enjoyed watching, I like watching the whole Metamora team, but Ryan Kennard, kid that was a fullback as a freshman. You've moved him to guard on the offensive line now. Started at linebacker for you. You put him in at guard to spell some of the starters. Played pretty well.
Oh, absolutely. And we don't expect anything else but that from Ryan. There's a guy that wasn't a starter last year on the football team, and he earned himself one of our 4 captain spots because of his work ethic, because of the respect that kids have for him and his work ethic. And we knew that Ryan was going to play a huge role on this football team.
Yeah, he contributed quite a bit Friday night. He had, I don't know how many tackles he had Friday night, but he had a few, and played pretty darn well up and down. It's nice to know that you've got somebody that can come in and spell some of your starters at times, because some of those guys had to play defense too. Oh. And you may not have to go that deep again, but because of the heat, you had to. You kind of know now, well, I can still go 3 and 4 deep in some of these positions, and we can still be pretty darn good.
And that is one good thing about the heat on Friday night, is it allowed us to see where we are at depth-wise. We don't like to see anybody leaving the field with cramps or anything like that, but it did allow us to see, okay, how will this person react in a game situation, or how, do we have to adjust calls, which we didn't have to at all. The train just kept on rolling, and it was Metamora football like usual.
Pretty much a team win.
It was. It was all the way around. Tackles are spread out everywhere on defense. Offensively, we were able to spread the ball around from one person to another. Offensive line up front. We didn't have to rely on one side or one person or anything like that. It was every single Metamora football player coming together, rallying around one another for the first win of the season.
So you go to 1-0, you face another pretty tough opponent in LaSalle Peru this coming Friday night, up at one of the kind of unique stadiums in the entire state, built back in the 20s. It's still one of the neater stadiums in the state, but LaSalle Peru knocked off Morton Friday night. You get them this coming Friday.
And they'll be a tough test again. It's another team that likes to run the ball, just like Notre Dame, but it's a different style of running. As far as they'll like to run the veer, they like to run some lead options, some sweeps, things of that nature. You saw Notre Dame pulling a lot of guards, pulling a lot of offensive linemen, where you won't see that with LaSalle Peru. So it's a little bit of different schemes. It's a little bit more downhill, and they'll be a little bit bigger than what we saw on Friday. They'll probably average about 240 across the line. I think their biggest is around 265, and so they're going to be another tough test for us.
And that's okay. You need these tough tests with these non-cons, and that prepares you down the road, because you're going to have some tough games coming up.
No, absolutely. We're going to have tough tests all throughout the Mid-Illini, and to go on the road, up in LaSalle, Peru, it'll be a tough place to play. And we always want to see how are we going to react on our first road game in a hostile environment.
On the turf?
On the turf. I believe it's going to be their first game on the turf. They had it last year, but due to vandalism, I don't think they actually played a football game. They hosted like graduation and stuff on that. But so it could be an electric place there on Friday night.
Well, Coach, congratulations. You're 1-0. Your last, that was your fifth game you coached. In the last two games, you've had two pretty big games. You beat Washington last year to end the season, and then the first game this year you beat Peoria Notre Dame. So
I just consider myself fortunate to be part of the coaching staff, part of the school, part of this community, and really able to work with a great group of kids like we have on this team.
Well, Coach, again, congratulations, and we'll see you Friday night.
All right, thank you very much.
That'll do it for the Jared Grebner Show. See you Friday night in LaSalle.